Hi friends, today we will start with another lecture on processing maps. Already in the previous lecture we have seen about deformation mechanism maps, and I told you that this idea of making map for different processes, deformation processes, was started with creep deformation, and it was proposed by Ashby, and then it was extended by Raj. So, you have Ashby maps and Raj maps. Now, we have also seen that there are few drawbacks of these maps, that these maps are based on atomic processes, and you need to have intimate knowledge about these processes, and you have to do a lot of microstructural analysis to kind of understand the deformation taking place at different fields or region, different range of stress and temperature. To take care of these issues, there was another model proposed, which is called dynamic materials model, and which actually started this processing map kind of making a map for doing hot processing. So, instead of calling it as deformation mechanism map, we are now calling it as processing map, and the dynamic materials model, which is also called as DMM. In that the model was proposed that these kind of maps can be constructed to identify the processing region. So, how they are doing it, that the processing is modeled as a system. For example, we are taking an example of forging here. So, already we know how the forging process takes place. You have a kind of hammer, or movable ram, and your workpiece is there, and you are kind of having a compressive deformation. So, what is moving the ram? The movement is given by, there must be some source, a power source, which is moving the ram, and that is what is the hydraulic system in this case. So, hydraulic pack is the one who is supplying the source, or which is the source of power, and then this power is stored in the whole tooling, the movement of the ram and so on. And then when you are giving input of this power to the material is acting as a dissipator of power. So, power is supplied by hydraulic, it is stored in the tooling arrangement, and then those tooling, the press and so on, has given that, or have put as an input of this power into the workpiece. So, workpiece is now acting as a dissipator of that power. So, now already we have seen constitutive equation. So, constitutive equation means how the material or workpiece is going to behave, that kind of decide that how this energy will be dissipated at any instant, and it will be dissipated in two forms. So, whatever power we are putting in, it will be dissipated in two ways. One is the change in the microstructure, which is a irreversible process. There will be as we have already seen, dynamic recrystallization, dynamic recovery, and all those microstructural processes can take place. So, deformation and dislocations will be generated, and so all these microstructural changes will take place. So, some part of the energy which you are putting in will go into the to change the microstructure of the material, and some, and in fact most of the part, not some, a good amount of this dissipation will be through thermal processes, that means generation of heat. So, already we have discussed that whenever we work on a material, whenever you are deforming a material, if you touch the material after the deformation, there will be some temperature rise in the material, and that is due to the dissipation of whatever energy or power you are putting in form of heat. So, this kind of created the argument for generation of processing map. Okay. So, what dynamic materials model propose that it treats this now system macroscopically. So, earlier deformation mechanism map we are going into the actual atomic processes, and from there we were trying to delineate different regions for different processes. But now DMM treats this macroscopically, and atomic processes are not taken into consideration, and so material is treated as a continuum. Okay. So, we are not worried about what is going inside. Okay. We are only looking at the variable or the input we give to the material in form of strain, strain rate, temperature, response of the material in form of stress. Okay. And using these values, we are trying to find out that how we can construct a map. Okay. So, stress, strain, strain rate, temperature are variable, and strain rate sensitivity is one of the material property already we discussed, are used to construct the model. Okay. So, we are using now continuum principle, not worried about what atomic processes are taking place. Okay. And coming with a macroscopic model. Okay. Now, for a processing map, what should be the requirements? Okay. So, the processing map or the model which is which we are proposing should have some criteria, okay, which tells us or which identifies safe processing conditions. Okay. So, my model, for example, in this case now DMM, the criteria for DMM model should be such that it should be able to identify the safe processing regions, okay, like dynamic recrystallization, dynamic recovery and so on, and how I can avoid the processing condition which give rise to defects like void formation, wedge cracking, adiabatic shear bands. Okay. So, all these defect flow localization. Okay. So, this is the requirement of a model or a processing map, that it should be able to identify these two important considerations for me: safe processing condition and unsafe processing conditions. Okay. So, now what is dynamic material model? As already we have discussed that workpiece or the material is considered as a dissipator of power. Okay. Of course, we are not considering it as a linear dissipator of power, it is a non-linear dissipator of power. Okay. So, if total power, if we want to see in terms of strain rate and stress here now. Okay. So, the total power is simply stress multiplied by strain rate. Okay. So, total strain rate multiplied by total stress, this whole area is the total power. Okay. So, this particular area, okay, kind of a rectangle. Okay. So, this is a rectangle, that is the total power I am putting in the system. Okay. And this total power, okay, the model suggests that it consists of two parameters. Okay. It is called G content and J co-content. Okay. And what this means is that power is composed of this G content and J co-content. Okay. And in terms of stress and strain rate, power can be defined like this. Okay. And in some new parameter which is suggested by DM, the power can be defined as composed of two factors, G content and J co-content. Okay. Now, what are these G and J co-content? G is called dissipator content, which dissipate energy by heat flow. Okay. So, as we have already discussed that when you are putting power in, okay, so the workpiece act as a dissipator of power, and dissipation is through two means, one is microstructural change and another one is heat. Okay. So, the G takes care of the heat flow, okay, or heat generation, and J is related to dissipation by microstructural changes. Okay. So, J is the one which takes care of the microstructural changes. Okay. And as we have already seen that stress varies by some exponential function. Okay, already if you remember, stress is always expressed as epsilon dot to the power m. Okay. That means it is a non-linear function. The stress is a non-linear function of strain rate. So, strain rate is on x axis and stress is on y axis. Okay. So, you can see that this deformation behavior of material, okay, the stress is a non-linear function of strain rate. That is why we are considering it as a non-linear dissipator of power. Okay. So, it is a typical curve which you can get whenever you are looking at stress and strain rate. And of course, as you can see in this particular case, the DMM model consider power law relationship between stress and strain rate. Okay. So, it assumes a power law relationship between stress and strain rate. Okay. So, which may not be true in some other processing condition, but the processing condition which they were looking at, they consider it as a power law relationship. Okay. And that is why you can see a curve like this. Okay. And non-linear variation of stress as a function of a strain rate. Okay. So, now this total power is divided into two areas now because of this non-linear curve. Okay. The G content is the lower part, okay, and J co-content is this upper part. Okay. So, above the curve is the J co-content and below the curve is G content. Okay. So, this is my any real system will behave like this. Okay. Whereas, if I take a ideal system, okay, where now if my this is of course m must be lower than 1. So, in this case m is lower than 1. If m is equal to 1, okay, then it will be a linear relationship obviously. So, sigma will be epsilon dot directly related to epsilon dot, okay, and there is no constant. So, it will start from 0 and it will be just a straight line. Okay. That means, it is dividing this rectangle now into two parts, equal parts. Okay. So, J and G are equally divided. So, equal amount of power is going into microstructural changes and equal amount of power is going into as a heat generation. Okay. And this is the maximum you can reach. Okay. You cannot go beyond m equal to 1. Okay. That is the maximum I can reach a strain rate sensitivity of 1. Okay. So, this is the maximum you can achieve. So, this is my maximum energy I can put in for microstructural change, which is the half of this rectangle. Okay. So, half of sigma epsilon dot, and now I can very nicely define that how much energy is going for microstructural change in a real system. So, this is for an ideal system maximum I can get, okay, half of the rectangle, and what is the actual now energy in any real system is going. So, if I have this kind of understanding, I should be able to say that whether my system is working at good efficiency or not in terms of microstructural change. That is what is the idea of DMM model. Okay. So, basically they have defined the efficiency of microstructural change, okay, by efficiency of power dissipation, which is a factor we call as eta. Okay. So, what it says that ratio of power dissipated in microstructural change J co-content divided by maximum possible efficiency, which is J max, which is half sigma epsilon dot, as I just told you. So, if you do a little bit mathematics here, okay. So, J which is coming from a real system and J max which is coming from an ideal system. Okay. So, of course, if I take this ratio, I should be able to say with what is the efficiency of my material, okay, under the certain processing condition to dissipate energy for microstructural change. So, I should have more efficiency of, that means eta should be more, so that I should have more energy going for microstructural change. Okay. Because all this high efficiency region are the region where actually all this good microstructural changes take place, for example, dynamic recrystallization, dynamic recovery and so on. Okay. So, all this desirable microstructural changes takes place where you have higher efficiency. Okay. So, that is what we are looking for here, and it is simply dependent on the strain rate sensitivity. So, only one material parameter, strain rate sensitivity of the material. Okay. So, if strain rate sensitivity is going to be high, then obviously I will have higher efficiency. Okay. So, this is how now you can use the data of stress as a function of strain rate at different temperatures, okay, to construct a contour map. Okay. So, a 3-dimensional contour map is shown here. So, you have log strain rate on this axis, temperature on this axis, and efficiency on the z axis, and there is a some 3-dimensional feature is there, okay, an envelope is there. Okay. If I take a section out of it, okay, at any particular efficiency, I should see something like this. Okay. So, you have these kind of contours, okay, which is coming from your this 3-dimensional envelope, okay, and now it is a 2-dimensional envelope, okay, and which is giving you the efficiency at different places. Okay. So, 41 is means 41% efficiency, that means 0.41 eta, okay, or in terms of percentage you can say 41% and then the 38%, 34% and so on. Okay. So, these are the what we call as efficiency map. Okay. So, high efficiency is desirable because I told you DRV, DRX, DRV, superplasticity are all high efficiency processes. Okay. However, occurrence of some defects like cracking, void formation also have dissipation, high dissipation efficiency. So, this is another interesting thing, that some defects also gives you very high efficiency for power dissipation, because lot of power goes in creation and propagation of these defects. Okay. So, so not all energy will go in microstructural change, some energy may also go in creation of these defects, and which are also high efficiency. Okay. So, just simply looking at a efficiency map and saying that okay, this is my high efficiency, that means all the good processes may be taking place, may not be true sometimes, because other defects which are produced in the material also have high efficiency. So, it may be possible that the defects are occurring at high efficiency region. Okay. So, we have to also have another criterion which is required to identify instability during deformation. Okay. So, one is high efficiency, I want to know that what is the high efficiency regions, okay, and you can understand that I am doing that just by knowing the stress as a function of strain rate, strain and temperature. Okay. So, you have temperature on x axis here and strain rate on y axis. Okay. Of course, it is taken as logarithmic because we are changing strain rate by order of magnitudes, okay, 10 to the power minus 3, 10 to the power minus 2, then 10 to the power minus 1 and so on. Okay. So, I have to have a log scale. Temperature I am more or less varying in linear fashion. So, x axis is linear here, and on that we are plotting this high efficiency maps. Okay. Now, as I told you, because of the defects, some defects are also having higher efficiency. Okay. I have to have another criterion which can tell me that where the instability is taking place. Okay. And that is again this DMM model suggests that what should be the instability criterion, okay, and that is also again dependent on the strain rate sensitivity. Okay. So, strain rate sensitivity is there. So, you just have to take logarithmic and the slope of that between m and m plus 1 as a function of epsilon dot will, and this particular value should be less, if it is less than 0 then there is an instability. Okay. So, this is an instability criterion. Okay. If it is more than 0 then I am in the stable region. Okay. So, sometime in books you will see the equation is written as greater than 0, do not get confused. Greater than 0 means they are trying to tell you that which are the stable processing conditions or stable regions in processing map, and if it is less than 0 means they are trying to tell you which are the regions where the instability can occur. Okay. So, instability conditions are like adiabatic shear bands, flow localization, dynamic strain edging, King bands and etcetera. So, lot of defects are there which can occur during the hot deformation process. Okay. So, this particular criteria can be used to identify the unstable region. For example, here it is shown in this figure here, there are some contours are shown A, B, C, D up to H. Okay. And if you see the value, the zeta value, okay, I have not included that here, actually this is should be zeta. Okay. So, zeta values if you see these are all negative, okay, 0.88, 0.7, 0.63 and so on. Okay. H is 0 basically, G is minus 0.13. So, this is my G contour. Okay. So, this is minus 0.13. Okay. So, basically here we are not concerned too much about the what is the value of zeta. As long as it is less than 0, that is enough for me to identify that this is an unstable region. Okay. I do not want to kind of find out whether it is more unstable or less unstable. Okay. If it is less than 0, that is sufficient for me. So, I will not be plotting these contours for instability when I am going to put it on a processing map. Okay. So, now you can see here two things are combined. Okay. So, you have efficiency contours, okay, 38, 34% and so on, and on top of that there is a this shaded region, okay, which is taken from this final contour H here, okay, where the instability parameter zeta has value of 0, okay, and below within that everything is now negative. Okay. So, they have identified this particular region as the unstable region. Okay. So, if efficiency is high, also if it may be possible that you have a high efficiency contour here, but we should not do any processing in this shaded region, because that high efficiency may be occurring because of the presence of some defects or presence of some instability in the material. Okay. So, actually you should already we have seen when we were developing constitutive equation that how you can get these parameters. Okay. So, I hope you will be able to do these kind of calculations without any problem. For example, m if I want to know, okay, so this is epsilon dot, this is sigma, and you have some, okay, variation like this, okay, as we have just seen. So, if I want to calculate now strain rate sensitivity m, okay, we know that it is dependent on this. Okay. So, one way is to take if the m is constant, one way is to take the ln of this thing and find out the slope of the straight line, which I have already told you. But suppose if the m does not remain constant during the deformation or at different strain rates, okay, then what you can do is you can fit a polynomial equation to this curve here, okay, and then you differentiate it. Okay. So, that will be able to give you the m at different locations. So, wherever you want you can put epsilon dot of that value. Okay. So, at different epsilon dot you will be able to get the slope, okay, if the slope is changing. And suppose at some point maybe it will become straight, then that is where you have power law breakdown. Okay. There is no power law dependence of stress on strain rate. Okay. So, it may be possible only in a certain strain rate window that your stress is dependent on strain rate, okay, with a exponent of m. Okay. Similarly, I think you should be able to calculate this zeta also, because only m is there and epsilon dot is there. Okay. So, you have to take ln of this and then differentiate it. Okay. And if the value is less than 0, you know that these are unstable regions. Okay. So, basically processing map is the one, okay, where the efficiency map and instability maps are superimposed on each other. Okay. So, that combined give you some processing condition, and that is why these are called processing maps. Okay. So, idea here is that you have to identify where you have higher efficiency. For example, you have higher efficiency at this point, then you have higher efficiency somewhere here, okay, and you have instability here. Okay. So, now the remaining areas are safe areas, I can do processing there, okay, but I would like to do processing where the efficiency is high. Okay. Generally, we would like to avoid high temperature region, because there you will have if any recrystallization is taking place, then subsequent grain growth will also be a possibility. Okay. Of course, in any industrial processes, if you want to increase the temperature, you also have to consider the cost of heating or cost of raising the temperature to a high temperature, okay, the electrical cost. Okay. So, you can always have a kind of a give and take here. Okay. So, maybe you can choose maybe lower efficiency region. Okay. It is here, it is 48%, but here is only 33%. Okay. But the temperatures are lower. Okay. And of course, strain rate are slightly higher. Okay. So, that is also good that you can do the processing at a higher strain rate. So, it will take much less time. Okay. So, the productivity will be more. Okay. So, all these things has to be considered by an engineer, okay, who is designing the process. Okay. Of course, you have to avoid the unstable region. Now, how to interpret and validate whatever you are developing? Okay. Till now, we have not talked about microstructure at all. Okay. We have just used the material response in terms of flow stress as a function of strain rate, temperature, and use that to develop this processing map. We have not talked anything about the microstructure right now. Okay. We have said that the high efficiency regions are the one where you will have dynamic recrystallization, dynamic recovery, and maybe some defect formation, and the unstable regions are where you have shear adiabatic shear bands or flow localizations. Okay. So, but we have not come to the processing map from the atomistic processes. Okay. We have come it from the continuum mechanics. So, now, but once we develop that, I want to know whether what I am trying to say or predict from the processing map is what is also being followed by the material. Okay. So, basically you have to do a microstructural analysis, but the advantage here is that you have to do very selected sample you have to see for microstructural analysis. So, wherever you have high efficiency, okay, so 2-3 samples from there, then maybe couple of sample from unstable region to identify, okay, in these regions some defect is occurring. Okay. So, that will be able to validate your processing map that it has been generated properly. Okay. So, as we told that dynamic recrystallization is one of our primary objective to have processing condition in that. Okay. So, in general from different materials, okay, when people have done work on this, okay, they are able to identify a few ranges right now, that for in terms of processing condition for low stacking fault energy materials, okay, the temperature range is around 0.7 to 0.8 of melting point, okay, and the strain rate range is around 0.1 to 1 per second. For low stacking fault energy, this is where you should be able to get a dynamic recrystallization, whereas for high stacking fault energy material the strain rate range is lower strain rate range, okay, as compared to the low taking fault energy materials. Okay. So, of course, the temperature will be more, the range will be more or less same. If you want to talk in terms of maximum dissipation efficiency, just to know that what we should aim for, what efficiency we should aim for. So, for lowest taking fault energy materials, 30 to 40% efficiency if you are getting, you should be in the dynamic recrystallization domain. Okay. And if you have a highest taking fault energy material, okay, like aluminum and so on, so the efficiency should be in the range of 50 to 55%. Okay. So, if you are able to get that kind of efficiency in a particular processing domain, okay, then you can be in the dynamic recrystallization region. Okay. So, this is what you should be looking for. Okay. Of course, microstructural science we have already discussed about dynamic recrystallized microstructure, that how they look. Okay. Few more things you can add there, okay, that if you have a S-cast structure, okay, S-cast structure already I have explained you initially, that you have dendrites, okay, dendrites, and so this is primary dendrite and then you have secondary dendrite, okay, and so on. Okay. So, these are the dendrites which have lower solute content, okay, and in between the two dendrites there will be interdendritic region where the solute content will be high. Okay. So, if this type of microstructure is changing it to a rod structure, okay, then it is a good sign that your processing condition is able to generate this kind of rod structure. If acicular structure, okay, means which acicular means which contains kind of this kind of blade like, if it contains these kind of features, okay, and that if that is changing into spheroidized or globularized microstructure, okay, then again you are in the good processing window. Okay. And prior particle boundary in powder metallurgy alloy material should be eliminated. So, you should not be able to see that what were the particle boundaries in the powder metallurgy material. Okay. So, if you are able to see all these features, you are in the dynamic recrystallization region. Instability regions, wedge cracking, okay, already we have seen that in the Raj map, that what do we mean by wedge cracking. Temperature range is of course high here, strain rate range is low. Okay. So, it is basically very high temperature and very low strain rate where you have superplastic kind of deformation, usually there you can see this kind of wedge cracking. Ductile fracture of course will occur at even lower temperature and higher strain rates. Okay. So, usually that should not be our concern in hot deformation. Adiabatic shear bends you will observe at 45 degree to the compression axis, okay, usually. Flow localization are usually less severe than adiabatic shear bends and this occur at around 35 degree to the compression axis. Okay. And there are king bends. So, if you know the perlitic structure where you have alternate bends of ferrite and cementite, okay. And when you deform this kind of structure, there are kinks which develop in this lamellar structure. Okay. So, it becomes something like this. So, there will be a kink like this. Okay. It has kinked. So, this is another kind of defect because later on you can have crack initiation at these points. Okay. So, these type of different instability condition can arise and these are the microstructural features for that. Okay. For example, few images are given here. This is a image for adiabatic shear bends. These are very narrow, typically 5 to 500 micron, and they consist of very highly sheared material. Okay. So, these happen as the name suggests because of the adiabatic heating. Okay. So, we know that when you are deforming at very high strain rate, you can also see the strain rate is mentioned here, okay, 1000 per second, 3000 per second. Okay. So, you are not giving enough time for heat to dissipate, okay, so the locally temperature will rise, okay, and the material will become very soft, okay, and when you are deforming, progressively the deformation will be concentrated in that narrow region, okay. So, and you can see that these are very long. So, they will actually usually cover large number of grains, okay. For example, here it is 600 micron is the scale, and it is almost covering the whole figure, okay. So, it must be around 1000 to 1500 micron shear bend, okay. So, it should at least cover maybe 50 grains or so, okay, of course depending upon the grain size, okay. Similarly, you can see here a very big shear bend is there, okay. Here also you can see a shear bend formation with the crack formation also, okay. It looks like that there is a crack here, okay, and the shear bend is somewhere here, okay. So, if you see go in the shear bend, you will see that very fine microstructure, very highly deformed material will be there, okay, because the deformation is localized there because of adiabatic heating. That is why these are called adiabatic shear bands, okay. So, this is a one kind of microstructural feature I wanted to show you when we are talking about defects, okay. So, after deformation mechanism map, we have seen processing map, okay, and the model which is used, which is called dynamic materials model to develop this processing map, we have discussed that, and it contains two important maps. One is efficiency map and another is instability map, okay, and combine that you should be able to identify the processing condition for your material, okay. So, in the next lecture we will see these aspects of processing map, okay, in more detail to understand that how we can see a processing map with more details, okay. Thank you.